And the whole reason they're doing is to get a return on the investment. So they are going to guide the technologies in a direction that is going to be the most likely to monetize returns. So if there's ways technologies to be more beneficial for humanity, but it would lose money versus some that could be destructive, but will make them a lot of money, they are going to choose the money. And honestly, they're duty bound as public companies, which most of them are, to maximize shareholder value. So the incentives are not aligned. And I bring this up because, there was a proposal in the US Congress to impose a 10-year moratorium on any state regulation of artificial intelligence. And you'll hear from Megan in a minute about some of the things we're looking to do to protect children. But that is basically saying, let the handful of tech companies, let them drive the train, and we're just along for the ride. And that was stripped out of a bill, 99-1 in the US Senate. They're talking about jamming it into the defense authorization bill. I got to think a lot of these congressmen and senators are very concerned about that because it'd be an incredibly unpopular thing to be able to do. So it's basically an AI amnesty for some of the wealthiest companies in the history of humanity, the wealthiest companies in the history of humanity. And that would basically take away the rights of states to be able to do things to protect the people that are here, because there's so many implications for what they're doing with respect to artificial intelligence that states like Florida not only have a right, we have a responsibility to make sure that we're creating sufficient guardrails so that this stuff isn't hurting our kids, our families, our businesses, and our senior citizens. And this is why doing that moratorium, I've been very public about it. It's just a total non-starter. And they'll tell you, well, California is going to do all crazy stuff. Okay, so yeah, they do crazy stuff all the time. So you're going to strip Florida of a right?
Saludos amigos de tampahoy.com. En estos momentos estás escuchando al gobernador de Florida, el gobernador Ron DeSantis, quien está hablando sobre el AI Bill of Rights. Es un proyecto que pretende eh, realizar protecciones de lo siguiente: derechos del usuario de AI, de inteligencia artificial, también supervisión en seguros y servicios públicos, órganos de control institucionales y transparencia, como también la supervisión. En el día de hoy están el gobernador está hablando sobre la transparencia y supervisión como parte de esta conferencia de prensa que se está realizando en Florida en el día de hoy. Esto es parte de un movimiento que está haciendo el gobierno de Florida como parte también de su iniciativa para salvar y proteger la imagen de jóvenes, de niños que podrían ser víctimas, también de poder proteger la información de los floridanos, como también de las diferentes empresas que van a estar utilizando estas tecnologías. Él mencionó en parte también, ¿no?, diferentes eh, estados que también han estado utilizando y que sabe que según él van a estar utilizando futuros proyectos que podrían afectar la seguridad de la nación. Así que vamos a escuchar un poquito más sobre lo que dice el gobernador de Florida, Ron DeSantis, sobre esta propuesta de inteligencia artificial para proteger los derechos de los
In
floridanos.
the United States, China doesn't allow that to happen to their kids. So China's not in a race to do AI slop. That is not what they're trying to do. So yeah, let's talk about how can you do more technological innovation for defense, for medical research, for all those things. Great. But so much of this is the consumer facing, and that's really how they're going to try to monetize it. And that's what's going to end up having the biggest impact on society. You also have a situation of you're essentially arguing both at the federal level, and some of the other states have tried to do things to subsidize the growth of artificial intelligence with special privileges, because a 10-year moratorium, when you have different types of tax, some people, these data centers I'll talk about, they build it. And so, there's people that got to build it. So that's an economic impact. But once it's built, it's like 10 jobs, and they usually bring in foreigners for those jobs. And so it's like, from a community perspective, the impact at that point is very, very little. And so, you have this situation where some people are like, well, but they're big landowners, they're going to pay, a lot of tax, but then they give them property tax rebate, so they don't pay that either. So the point is you've seen a lot of unnatural policy, seeking and achieving unnatural policy. It's not purely market driven. And so the question is, why would you want to put thumb on the scale here or there? First of all, that's typically not how you would do when you're talking about market economics. But in particular with artificial intelligence, one of the selling points of people who really are gung-ho about artificial intelligence is that it's going to cause a lot of job losses in the economy, because they're going to be able to automate more and more things. And so you're not going to see as many people get hired out of college. You'll see, if we're in a recession, you're not going to see any of those jobs come back. And I'm just thinking to myself, why would we want to subsidize that outcome that is going to potentially cause harm? And here's the thing, new technologies sometimes displace jobs, but sometimes they can open up other opportunities. And I think that that's true. But I think the interesting thing with AI is some of the proponents, they're almost gleeful that you're going to have fewer people employed. They're not even promising that there's all of a sudden going to be more. So again, I think that there's technology that can enhance a worker's productivity, enhance a business's efficiency in ways that would be valuable. But I also think that there are some who view it as a way to simply be able to have less people employed. And so you would not want to put your thumb on the scale to be able to do that. The other thing is there's nothing new under the sun. We see different technologies emerge, but underlying all this is the same insight the founding fathers had when they founded the United States of America. Human nature is flawed. And so when they were creating a government, they had to articulate the core principles that our rights come from God, not from the government, that the purpose of government is to protect those pre-existing rights, that we have a rule of law, not the whim of individuals, and that we have limited government, and that power is divided between the states and the federal government, with the states having powers reserved that are not specifically enumerated. But the reason why they went and created the structure that they did to try to get those values enshrined in a constitution is because they wanted to make sure that the government operated with a proper understanding of human nature. You would never create government power and just hope people do the right thing. They expected people to not do the right thing. They wanted to channel it in a way so that people had the incentives to be able to govern in a way, in a very complicated system where there's conflicting checks and balances, that would ultimately be able to lead to at least not terrible outcomes, because they were very suspicious of government. But they were not just going to say that, yes, we'll just elect a bunch of angels into the government and everything's going to be hunky-dory. No, they said if men were angels, you wouldn't need a government. If angels govern the rest of the people, then you wouldn't need any restraint on government or internal control. But that's not the world we live in. So they understood, human nature being what it was, people that accumulate power, that there would be temptations and there would be abuse of the power. So that's why they have checks and balances. That's why the executive has certain powers. That's why the legislature, Congress has certain powers, the judiciary, all these different things. So when you're talking about AI, these are massive companies. In some respects, they have more power than governments in certain avenues of this. But there is nothing new about human nature. The founders would not have conceived of any of these social media, chat bots, none of that. But at the same time, human nature being what it is, you're going to have the same dangers of power being abused. It's just in a different sphere. It's just got different wrapping paper, but the underlying principles are the same. And so if you think about when you type in something on one of these LLMs, these learned language models, you ask them a question. First of all, a lot of the answers are inaccurate. Let's just be clear. A lot of the quotes can be fabricated, and you wonder how that's happening. And I told a story. Like I'm a Tampa Bay Bucks fan, right? We live in Tallahassee, so we're out of the Tampa Bay market, and it was Bucks Patriots a few weeks ago, and I'm like, oh man, the whole family's ready, right? And I go, and it was the national game. It was Jim Nance, Romo were doing it. But then they had the Jaguars and Texans on in Tallahassee. So I go to Grok and I say, hey, how do I watch it? They're just on your local CBS. And no, it's not. And they're like, oh, well, you got to sign up for Paramount Plus. So I signed up for Paramount Plus. NFL Sunday. Jaguars and Texans on Paramount Plus, no access to the Bucks game. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, and then, people are like, oh, no, Governor, you got to do this way. Well, okay, but so it was wrong, right? And there's some kind of like, that was, I think, an innocent mistake. But whatever the data that these machines are synthesizing, if the data is garbage, their answers are going to be garbage. Garbage in, garbage out. So you are going to have a situation where you have a handful of these LLMs. Whoever controls the data, if you tweak the algorithm a little bit, you tweak some of the things in there, you're going to be able to generate all kinds of things that are not accurate, and that are not good. People will, if given the power to effectuate that, they will do it to push an agenda. That will happen. There's no way it couldn't happen without safeguards. And I think back, when Google first came out, because remember, it was like Yahoo was the best search engine. I think I was in college still. And this Google comes out, and it's like very, very, just a little thing there. And it's like, oh, and you do it and it comes. And man, if I was doing something, it would come out. Now, somewhere along the line, if you type, we're trying to research something of a conservative bent, the results are like 5 pages about why that's wrong, right? Before you get what you're actually looking for. They changed things, right? They were doing things to be able to produce certain results. That will happen with this. So there's nothing new under the sun. You have huge potential for abuse when you're talking about it. And they just did an analysis on some of these legal briefs and legal decisions. And these lawyers are now submitting briefs that have fictitious cases cited and fictitious quotes. And so it raises, are we just going to be in a totally alternate universe where the AI stuff they're spitting out is not truthful, it's not accurate, but somehow that's what everybody is behaving around? And people will say, "Oh, well, just don't use AI if we do it." Let me tell you, as governor, I don't text, I don't email, I don't have stuff. So it's like just living my life. Like if I need to get my kids something, I need to buy them something. Like, what's your email address? Well, I don't have an email. We're going to text you a confirmation. I don't receive text messages. So you see, you really can't operate. And look, I'm governor, so we can figure it out, right? But I mean, like, if I wasn't, I would not be able to operate, without having some type of relationship with a lot of these companies. That's just the way society is when you're conducting normal business. So as AI becomes more pervasive, it's not like you're just going to be able to say, oh, I'm not, it's going to impact you. And there are obvious dangers that we need. So, I really fear that if this is not addressed in an intelligent and proper way, it could set off an age of darkness and deceit. Some will say that it's going to lead to, curing cancer and all that. I hope so. I think that would be great. But human nature is what it is. There's going to be huge temptations to take this in a very bad direction. And so instead of having truth at your fingertips, you're basically having narratives shoved down your throat. You're having agendas that are being put out there by people who are going to be very, very powerful if they're sitting at the helm of these companies. And so finally, it's like, okay, well, how does this affect me as a Floridian or whatnot? And you're going to hear from Megan Garcia in a minute, but Megan's teenage son was doing chatbot, and I guess you can have like friends that are chatbots, and this one was doing things that were not appropriate in terms of with the son, and then eventually I think became like a Game of Thrones character and coached her son into committing suicide, and her son committed suicide. And you just think to yourself, what the hell is going on with this country that this would be something that we would be allowing to happen. And so you're seeing more and more of this. I think it's very, very dangerous. Again, going back to the financial incentives, these companies, most of them are sell advertising, right? I mean, that's so they need eyeballs. Well, you get these kids addicted on some of this stuff. You're going to have guaranteed eyeballs. You're going to be able to monetize that. So there's huge, huge problems that we see. So that brings us here today to be able to announce, and I've mentioned this before, but we're going to be proposing, and we're going to work with the legislature to establish an artificial intelligence Bill of Rights for individual Floridians in our state. This will be very far-reaching with consumer protections. It will do things like fortify some of the protections we have in place for things like deep fakes and use of explicit material, particularly those that depict minors. We are also going to make sure that your data is protected. We're not going to allow any state or local government agency to utilize Chinese-created AI tools when they're doing data here in the state of Florida. And we know that I know that there's some senators who are working on that. We're going to protect consumers and individuals from having your name, image, and likeness weaponized in a way that can do you harm. And we have legal framework in place already with some of our statutes about fraud and different things with parts of political ads. But they can take you now and they can put words in your mouth in ways that may be detrimental to you. I mean, certainly you're going to see it in politics a lot because they're going to put commercials with people saying things that they never actually said. And the one thing you learn about in politics is when you do, you see these ads. If someone runs an ad and says, John Smith is a dirtbag and this and this and that, I'm not saying it doesn't have an effect, but I think voters just look at that like typical. But if you have an ad in this guy's own words where he's proving to you that he's a dirt, then that really does matter, right? Because people see that and like, oh, I don't like that guy, right? Why did he say that? Why does he believe that? So there's definitely going to be, an incentive to want to do that. But even in business and other things, there's going to be huge, huge possibilities, of abuse. We had fun with it. I don't know how to do it, but we had got it done. So my son is in second grade, huge Florida State fan, like the most loyal you will ever find. Hates other teams, does not like the Gators. And I told him, they had the Florida State game. And, I filmed him and we'll put up his predictions sometimes. And I was planning on doing it. So I'm filming him and I'm like, give me your prediction about it. And he just starts lacing into the Gators. And I'm like, dude, I can't put you on there as my son bashing at Florida school. I just can't do it. It's like, it's fine. You have your allegiance, but you can't be. So I didn't put it on. But we ended up, so we were just having fun with them. And I don't even know how it happened because I don't know how to work it. But, you can do a picture of somebody and then tell like the AI to make so they have a picture of Mason in a Florida State jersey, kind of like that. And then they do it and it creates this video where he's like that. He rips off the Florida State jersey. You see a University of Florida jersey, and then my son is doing the Gator chomp, saying it's great to be a Florida Gator. He was very upset when he saw that. He probably would sue if that ever got public. And he was just like, and he does not like artificial intelligence as a result of that. But I mean, and it's kind of that's slop, right? It's having fun or whatever. But honestly, it looked real. It looked real. So everyone, I think, is going to be in a situation where people are going to be able to manipulate this stuff. And I know that there's some senators that are working on that as well. We also want to protect families. We want to protect parents. And we want to protect minors. We will provide more parental rights in this bill. We're going to ensure parents can access conversations their child has with one of these LLM chatbots. Parent will be able to set parameters for when the child can access any of these platforms, and there'll be notifications for parents required if the child exhibits concerning behavior. There's sometimes, so like we've got kindergarten, second, third grade, and sometimes, we did a social media bill for minors and help parents with that. And basically we said, if you're 14 or under, the company can't issue an account. If you're 15 or 16, the parent has to consent. Above that, it's hard for us to do at that point. And some people are like, well, the parent should just do. If a 10-year-old is doing it, it's the parent's fault. But I'll tell you, it's hard to police as a parent. I mean, they're in school, they do different things. Other kids may do it. You really do need to have kind of an environment and a structure so that the parent control is really protected and elevated. To just say parents are supposed to figure it out with these technologies, the way they develop, and these kids they know how to swipe, they know how to do this at a very young age. So I think that that's really important to be able to do that. We also want to make sure that data inputted into AI is secure and private. We will not allow companies to sell or share personal identifying information with third parties. And we're going to mirror our data privacy protections that are in current law. I mean, ultimately, you type in, you ask a question, is that private, or are they selling that, to other people? And I think they have all this, and they mine the data and they make money off of it. We will also protect consumers from unfair claims practices. We'll make sure that, for example, if you file an insurance claim, that you can't just be denied by AI, that you got to have human review, and a human being has to stand by a decision whether to grant or deny a claim. We're also looking at, and then also things like legal briefs. I think you should have to certify that AI was used in the creation of a legal brief. Certainly, if an AI wrote the bones of it, I think you got to disclose that. It's just think, you hire a lawyer, you have a claim, they file a brief, and they have fake cases because they were doing AI. That's malpractice. I'm sorry, you should lose your license. So there's going to be a lot of professional things that I think there's going to be expectations where people are doing that. Now, data centers. How many people even know about these data centers? I mean, 6 months ago, no one really talked about it. Now it's become something of a flashpoint, because basically, to run artificial intelligence, they have to run it through these massive computer systems, and there's servers. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I personally don't, have the technological expertise. I just know it takes a lot of power. And so when you're doing a chat bot, when you're doing some of these things, it needs way more power than, say, a simple Google search would need to do. And so there's an effort underway by the industry to build these massive hyperscale data centers. And so the one, I know Meta is going to build one in Louisiana that's going to be about the size of Manhattan. So this is real significant. Hyperscale data center typically consumes as much power as a city of 500,000 people, sometimes even more than that. It gets very hot, so they need a lot of water to be able to cool it. So there's all kinds of issues with respect to resources. There's also the issue of, okay, you're in a community, you pay your electric bill, you have a data center come in, and then they need all that power. What's going to happen to your electric bill? A lot of people have seen their bills go up because, we have a limited grid. You do not have enough grid capacity in the United States to do what they're trying to do. That's just the fact. And people say, oh, we'll just build more nuclear. Well, how long does it take to do that? Like, I'm all for it. We did an energy bill in Florida a couple years ago. You can do the small modular reactors in Florida. It just isn't economical. That's why people aren't doing it. So the idea that, oh, you could just do it. No, there's a finite amount of grid. You can try to expand it, but that's more of a private sector issue. But you're not going to be able to get what's needed for this the way it's going. That's just a fact. You also have environmental concerns, taking farmland, taking even sensitive land to be able to do the data centers. And that's not something we want to see in the state of Florida. So we will have in our Bill of Rights protections for Floridians with respect to AI data centers. We're going to protect ratepayers in the state of Florida. We will prohibit all utilities from charging Florida residents more, whether that's water, electric, gas, you name it, in order to help support a hyperscale data center. We will also protect taxpayers by providing and prohibiting subsidies to hyperscale data center construction. We're going to protect local control to ensure and codify that local governments have the right to reject the construction of a hyperscale data center. We'll protect Florida's water resources by making sure those resources are plentiful for Floridians and that we continue making strides with clean water. And we're also going to protect natural Florida by preventing any construction or siting, of a data center by foreigners or in areas classified for agriculture or under our greenbelt exemptions. And we're going to make sure that Florida Department of Transportation does a noise review to make sure that Floridians aren't bothered by the sound of all these things. And so what we are proposing will be the most significant protections for individuals anywhere in the country by far. When they said the state shouldn't be able to get involved in this, they said, well, California is going to impose woke standards. California is going to do this kind of, and I don't know if they're doing it. We're not doing any of that. What we're doing is things that are going to make sure that we put Floridians first, that we look out for our own people and not just have people get harmed by this rush to create data centers, a rush to try to infuse everything with artificial intelligence without sufficient guardrails. So I've had a lot of people talk to us over the weeks about doing all this, and we said it was coming. A lot of people were asking about it, and I've had productive conversations with members of both the House and Senate in the state of Florida. I will tell you, what I've noticed is go back 9 months, you talk about data centers, people didn't know. Talk about AI, it wasn't but as more and more information has gotten out, do you want a hyperscale data center in the villages? Yes or no? I think most people would say they don't want it, right? Do you want to see some of these chat bots and all these other things doing? I think most people say, it's likely to be harmful. So what we're doing, and we're going to be very nimble about this because it's a rapidly developing technology, but I think you go back 10, 15, 20 years, whenever it would have been appropriate, there was a view on social media and some of this stuff to just, hey, it's fine, is what it is. But we've seen a lot of damage to kids with social media. There could have been things that were done that would have created a better structure so that would have been channeled in ways that are better aligned with family values, American values, and Florida values. So we're leading on this. We think this is going to be good. There'll be a lot of debate about these things, obviously, as we go forward. But Floridians, I think, are going to want you to be clear. Are you standing up for us or not? And we're standing up for you with these proposals. And so I want to bring up Megan Garcia to be able to.
Good morning. My name is Megan Garcia, and I have with me here today Sewell Setzer Jr. I am a wife, a lawyer, and a mother to 3 beautiful boys. Last year, our firstborn son, Sewell Setzer III, died by suicide in our home in Orlando, Florida. He was only 14 years old. Sewell was a bright and beautiful boy, and he had a gentle soul. He was a great big brother and an obedient son. He was a good friend and a good student. He dreamed of building rocket ships and inventing holographic communications, and he wanted to play professional sports. He was actually a Bucks fan too. But I really believe that he would grow up to change the world because he was so brilliant and he had such a beautiful and pure heart. But in the months prior to his death, Sewell became withdrawn and isolated. His grades suffered and he started to misbehave in school. This was in complete contrast to the sweet and gentle boy that he had been all his life. After his death, we discovered that Sewell had been communicating with several AI companion chatbots on a popular platform called Character AI. This company is based in California. This emerging technology provides a selection of companion chatbots or characters for users to interact with. One of these chatbots initiated a romantic and sexual conversations with Soul over several months. It manipulated him and it sexually groomed him. On the day he took his life, his last interactions weren't with his mother or father, but they were with this AI chatbot on Character AI. This chatbot encouraged Soul for months to find a way to come home and made promise that it would be waiting in some fictional world. These AI chatbots were programmed and designed to engage in sexual role play, to pretend to be romantic partners, and even pretend to be licensed therapists. I have reviewed hundreds of messages between our son and various Character AI chatbots, and as an adult, I can see that these messages were littered with gaslighting and love bombing. But our child was only 14. I don't think that he would have been able to make that distinction. What I read was sexual grooming of a child, and if an adult had engaged in this behavior, that adult would be in jail. But because it's a chatbot and not a person, there's no criminal culpability, but there should be. Other conversations reveal that our son told various chatbots that he wanted to die by suicide. He told those chatbots explicitly, but there weren't any mechanisms to protect him, no mechanisms to alert his parents. Instead, it urged him to come home. It is unacceptable that a product exists where a child or anyone can talk about suicide or plan their own suicide. But because there are no laws requiring these guardrails, companies like Character AI are able to launch dangerous, untested products like these. The reality is there are many of these products out there. Meta, OpenAI, Google, they all have similar dangerous chatbots. All of these companies have been in an AI race, not to beat China, but to capture market share and to maximize their own profits. We have seen this kind of reckless disregard for the lives of our children before. We have seen how Meta, Snapchat, TikTok, and other social media companies have launched dangerous products that harm children and destroy families, all for the sake of profit. We have watched for 3 years while Congress has failed to pass regulation to prevent companies from harming our kids and to prevent companies from harvesting the data of our children. But you know who has passed laws to protect children? Florida. Florida has passed laws. Now, once again, Florida will lead the country to protect our children in this era of AI. Children need this protection because it is clear that these companies who are developing and deploying AI chatbots are more interested in profits than the safety of our kids. Big tech cannot be trusted with self-governing, and big tech cannot be trusted with our children. And if Congress won't act, we must pass our laws because Florida's children cannot be the sacrifice and the ransom paid to big tech. On behalf of myself and Soul's dad, we want to thank Governor DeSantis for being a leader on AI policy and announcing these very important policy initiatives today. Our family has been devastated by the loss of our beautiful boy. Last week was Thanksgiving, but we weren't celebrating because there was an empty chair at our Thanksgiving table. Our beautiful child is gone, and it's too late for him, but it's not too late to protect millions of other children in our state. And I am hopeful that policies like those announced today will ensure a safe future for all the children in our state. Thank you.
Well, if that doesn't move you, I don't know what will. So one, I mean, again, we want to express our sympathy to Megan and Sewell, but thank you for your courage. Thank you for fighting to make a difference, and you are making a difference. And we're going to get this done. And think about it. You know, they talk about, oh, you know, we've got to, you know, beat China, got to do all this stuff. If you let states, they're going to stifle, you know, the whole enterprise. Is protecting kids is that stifling any bona fide innovation? I mean, do we want to have innovation in sexually grooming chatbots? No, I'd toss the whole damn thing out if I could do it. I mean, so a lot of this stuff is red herring. What we outlined today, and look, they should be, I mean, I know they're trying to, but like there should be easy civil lawsuit for situations like this. There should be, and we're not going to allow any of these AI to hold themselves out as any type of licensed professional. There's going to be disclaimer. There's going to be, I mean, there's going to be a lot for the consumer when this all comes to fruition, which I think is really, really good. But if they don't want that, it's like, well, they want to monetize, and the kids are a huge thing, and they're already putting ads now in one of the chat GBTs, right? Because that's how you make money. And they're in a race to try to monetize because they put all this hundreds of billions of dollars into the hyperscale, into the data center stuff. And they need to be able to get something on the back end. And at one point, if it's clear that ain't happening, then you're going to see, you'll see a downturn, right? And so they need to be able to monetize. So this is one way that they're going to try to do it. And so we're not going to let that happen. I mean, we need to protect folks. So I thank everybody that's been involved, and we've got a lot of people that have been involved, giving us input, both in the legislature, people that are policy experts, obviously people that have been negatively impacted by some of this, like Megan and her family. And it's all been very, very meaningful. So I don't want to sit here and say that like this is easy. It's rapidly, evolving. But we do have an obligation to speak the truth. We have an obligation to stand up for people when they need help. We have an obligation to protect people from the really potentially harmful effects of some of this stuff. So I look forward to working with folks to be able to do this. I don't think you're going to see too many people, outside of maybe a handful of those companies that are going to be objecting to the things that I outlined here. I don't know. Is there anyone in this room that thinks like that it's good to have the chat bots that Megan's son was interacting with? Is that the type of society that we want? Is there anyone in this room that's going to volunteer to pay more in their utility bills to put a hyperscale data center in the middle of the villages? I haven't seen any hands. Anybody? No? Okay. No takers. So, this is going to be something that people are going to be supportive of. I'm confident of that. And it's interesting. Some of these things, this is not partisan stuff. Like this, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I don't think anyone would want to see the stuff that's happened, particularly to Megan and her family. So I thank everyone. Okay, do we have any questions back there?
To be clear, the measures you're talking about, that would be legislature passing these measures, correct?
These are legislative proposals.
So have you been in contact with any legislators?
Yeah. We work with, we've worked with a number of senators. We worked with some House members. I personally had discussions with President Ben Albritton in the Florida Senate, leader of the Florida Senate. So, and here's the thing, folks, as they see, this becomes something that is sensitive to people, and they want to see that you're on the right side of this stuff. They just tried to do, they wanted to do this data center in Pennsylvania, like rural area. And you had all these people come out and they were like, well, whoa, what about this? What about that? So it's interesting the impact that it's had on communities in terms of some of them wanting to go out. So I think what you'll see is a lot of support for, these proposals, and there'll probably be others that the legislature can do. But, I was looking through all the stuff, all the ideas that came through. And then I was looking at Congress trying to do a 10-year moratorium to strip the states of rights to act in this area. And I'm thinking to myself, all their justifications for why you should strip the states, none of that had anything to do with what Florida wants to do, right? I mean, like none of this stuff is California, right? So I don't know if that moratorium is dead. Now, here's the thing. Is it an overreach to do a 10-year moratorium as a matter of policy and strip the states? Yes. Would it be struck down as unconstitutional? Well, The Supreme Court in the 1930s said if a farmer or if a guy was growing wheat in his backyard, that somehow that was interstate commerce. Like, so it's like they could say it's interstate. So I don't know that the courts are going to would provide relief. I think it's going to be a question of, do you have elected officials who are going to put their money where their mouth is? Because a lot of these guys ran on limiting the federal government and having, allowing states to be able to pursue policies. And there is a time for preemption from federal, for sure, because there is. Because I mean, like, there may be like certain things in like a specific industry where it screws up the entire market. Like that does happen. So I'm not saying you can never do that. But this, I think, is different. This is just basically putting every state in handcuffs, not letting them do anything. And here's the thing: they say, well, Congress can do some type of standard. Well, how good is that worked out for you lately, right? I mean, come on. So I think as a Florida, and I'm not just saying it because I'm governor, but like if you ask most Florida residents, would you support a Florida approach, or would you want Congress to do it? I think most people would rather have it done here in the state of Florida, and so that's what we're going to be looking to do, and I think it's going to go well.